Okay, so are you ready to dive into a career path that I'd never even heard of before?
I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
Okay, so it's Aquaculture Recirculation Manager.
Okay.
And it sounds really complicated, but the more I read about it, the more interested I got.
Yeah, it's really interesting work, especially now with the way that people are thinking about food and sustainability.
Exactly. So we're looking at these career guides from RoleCatcher today, and they use this term recirculating aquaculture systems, RAS for short. Can you break down what exactly that means?
Well, think of it like this. Instead of having fish farms out in the ocean, you're building a completely closed, self-contained ecosystem.
It's like a really high-tech fish tank.
Kind of, but on a much larger scale.
Hmm?
We're talking about using technology to create the perfect environment for fish or other seafood to grow in.
So what kind of technology are we talking about here?
Everything sensors AI sophisticated filtration systems.
Hmm,
Pretty amazing what they can do now.
I bet. It sounds like a far cry from the image most people have of traditional fish farming.
It definitely is. And that's what makes it so exciting. You get to combine a deep understanding of marine biology with cutting-edge technology.
It sounds pretty cool. The guide also mentioned that it can be pretty physically demanding. What's something that surprised you about the day-to-day work?
The variety of tasks is pretty surprising. One minute, you might be up to your elbows in water, testing the pH levels.
And the next minute?
You could be analyzing growth data on a computer or managing a team of technicians.
So it's a good mix of hands-on and more analytical work.
Exactly. You need both to be successful.
And speaking of different types of work, the guide also mentioned a bunch of different job titles, like you can be an aquaculture technician or a manager. There's like a clear career ladder in this field?
Oh, definitely. You can start with entry-level positions where you learn the ropes,
Yeah.
and then as you gain experience, you can move up to managing larger systems or even entire facilities.
So for someone listening who's now like, okay, this sounds interesting, what kind of person would really thrive in this kind of environment?
You got to be a problem solver.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Makes sense. You're dealing with live animals. Things can change quickly.
Right. So being adaptable is super important too.
And I imagine a strong stomach doesn't hurt.
Huh. That either. And it's not just about reacting to problems as they come up. You really need to be able to anticipate them.
So you need that solid science background.
Absolutely.
Right.
Biology, chemistry, even a little engineering can come in handy.
It's like you said before, it's not just about loving fish. You got to be able to understand the systems that keep them alive.
Exactly. And those systems are constantly evolving too.
That's right. RoleCatcher made a big point about that. They emphasized the importance of continuous learning in this field.
It makes sense. This isn't the kind of career where you just learn everything once and you're good to go.
Right. You got to stay up to date on the latest technologies and best practices. So how does someone in this field actually stay ahead of the curve? What did RoleCatcher recommend?
Certifications are a big one.
Like becoming a certified aquaculture professional.
Exactly. That shows potential employers that you're serious about your work and that you're keeping your skills sharp.
And I'm sure there are always new things to learn through conferences and workshops and things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
The learning never really stops.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes it so exciting. You're always challenged to grow and expand your knowledge.
And probably networking with other people in the field.
Huge. Networking is so valuable. It lets you learn from other people's experiences, share ideas, and hear about new opportunities.
Because who you know matters as much as what you know, right?
100%.
So speaking of opportunities, RoleCatcher really seemed to emphasize the growth potential within this field. It's not just a job. It's a career path with lots of different branches.
It totally is. They had that whole section about all the different career paths you can take.
Yeah, like you could start as a technician and then work your way up to managing an entire facility.
Exactly. Or you could specialize in a particular area,
Yeah.
like fish health or system design.
So there's room for people with all sorts of interests and skills.
Absolutely. As long as you're passionate about sustainability and have a knack for problem solving, there's probably a place for you in this industry.
Now, let's be real for a second. No job is perfect.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges someone might face working in this field? Based on what we've read from RoleCatcher, I mean.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is the schedule. These systems need 24/7 monitoring, so you might have to work some evenings or weekends, especially as you move into more senior roles.
That makes sense. You're dealing with live animals. Their needs don't follow a regular 9 to 5 schedule.
Right. And because these systems are so complex, there's not a lot of room for error. You have to be really detail-oriented and meticulous in your work.
So this is probably not a good job for someone who's easily stressed.
Probably not. But for the right person, someone who thrives under pressure and who's passionate about making a difference, It can be an incredibly rewarding career.
And speaking of making a difference, RoleCatcher really highlighted the bigger picture here. Beyond the day-to-day tasks of the job, we're talking about the future of food.
Exactly. As the global population grows, we need to find sustainable ways to feed everyone. And aquaculture could be a big part of the solution.
It's like we're on the verge of a whole new agricultural revolution. But instead of fields of crops, we're talking about these high-tech facilities producing seafood in a way that's both efficient and environmentally responsible.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's the people working in these facilities who are leading the way.
So while the work might be challenging, the potential impact is huge.
Absolutely. You're not just raising fish.
Yeah.
You're contributing to a more sustainable and food-secure future.
Which is a pretty incredible thing to be a part of.
It really is.
So we've talked about the job, what it takes, and the impact it can have. But what about those who are ready to actually pursue this career path? What advice did RoleCatcher have for landing a job?
Well, first of all, they had a ton of great resources. Links to professional organizations, industry publications, even online forums.
So people can connect with others in the field?
Exactly. Networking is so important. And they also stressed the importance of informational interviews.
Those are always good to do.
Yeah, you can get a feel for what the day-to-day is really like.
And make sure it's a good fit for you before you go through the whole application process.
Right. And RoleCatcher even had some tips on how to prepare for those informational interviews, like what kind of questions to ask.
They really did think of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I have one last question that came up for me while I was reading through all this.
Go for it.
So we've talked a lot about the environmental benefits of recirculating aquaculture systems, but what about the cost? How does the cost of raising sea this way compare to traditional methods?
That's a really good question. And it's something that a lot of people are trying to figure out right now.
Because I imagine the initial investment in these facilities is pretty steep.
It can be.
Yeah.
And then there's the cost of energy and specialized equipment.
So it's a complex issue with a lot of factors to consider.
Definitely.
Huh.
But as the technology improves and those costs come down, I think we'll see more and more of these types of facilities popping up.
Which could be really good news for the future of food.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
That was a good one. I learned a lot.
Me too! From managing those self-contained ecosystems to the global implications for food security, it's clear that aquaculture recirculation managers have a crucial role to play in the years to come.
For sure. It's definitely a career path worth exploring.
Well said. And for our listeners, if this episode sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to check out the resources we've linked in the show notes. There's a whole world of information out there. And who knows? Maybe you'll discover your next dream job. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us.